So the Indiana Pacers beat the Cleveland Cavaliers 114-105. This was a hell of a comeback, first and foremost, from the Indiana Pacers. This was outstanding to me. I had this at 1.44-25 Cleveland. I thought that early in the game, Cleveland did a really good job of stopping Indiana from getting out in transition. I thought that for the first time in the series, honestly, Cleveland also started winning like the loose ball battle. I think that's been a thing where the Pacers throughout the course of the series just had way more urgency, maybe is the way to put it. Like it felt like every moment on the court was like a war to them. And for the Cavs, be it injuries, be it whatever it was, it was just a little bit more tentative than it was for Indiana just going balls to the wall all the time. And then right around what mark is this? Like in the second quarter at the 7-minute mark, Nembhard, I think I can't remember if it was Garland or if it was Mitchell. He just like read them like a book on the back end and got a steal on the back line. And then on the next defensive possession, Miles Turner swatted the shit out of Jared Allen on like an attempted dunk. And then after the Turner dunk, Naismith came down and drilled a 3. And then Nembhard came back, drilled a step back 3. And then at 48-38, Allen had to pick up Nembhard in transition with a guard-to-guard screen. Halliburton gets left wide open for a 3 because he has just cooked Jared Allen relentlessly in this series. Next possession, another Allen switch onto Halliburton. Halliburton cooks him for a step back 3. Then like 3 possessions later, Siakam comes up, sets a flare screen while he's being guarded by Jared Allen to get Halliburton open for a 3. And that's like a Jared Allen miscommunication. And then like it just kind of snowballed from there. It felt like to me. And I think what I want to talk about most with this and why I think Indiana won this series above all, they are the best team in the playoffs right now. I don't think they're the most talented team in the playoffs, but they are the best team in the playoffs at lethally pinpointing the exact mismatch that they have on the court. Whenever that mismatch presents itself, finding it and exploiting it. They are completely and utterly ruthless at this. If it's Halliburton where he feels like he has an advantage, but he sees Pascal Siakam has one of Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell on the block, he's throwing the ball into the block every single time for Siakam just to go up and finish. If Jared Allen picks up a guard in transition, because that's the other thing the Pacers do exceptionally well, is they run so fast that they put so much pressure on your transition defense to pick up somebody in transition. You just have to pick up whoever. If it's Nembhard, if it's Naismith, whoever it is that Jared Allen has to pick up, that player immediately goes to screen for Halliburton every time. They are ruthless and relentless in attacking the exact mismatch that they have pinpointed as their advantage in this series. And I think that that is why they won above all. And a big part of this, by the way, is the way the roster is constructed. Like Tyrese Halliburton being arguably the best floor general, like point guard in the NBA, like traditional floor general, guy who distributes, gets the ball to his teammates in a timely manner without turning the ball over, everything like that. That is what makes this easy for them versus someone like Oklahoma City, right? Where we're going to try and run ball screens to eventually find the mismatch. And then we have to trust Shea to make the right decision depending on the doubles that come, which like in this series against Denver, he's not necessarily done, right? And Shea has much more off the bounce than Halliburton, like better mid-range scorer than Halliburton. Like I'm not saying that Halliburton is better than Shea. He's not. But at the specific skill of being able to pinpoint, scan the court, pinpoint the exact mismatch and find it, I think Indiana, because of Halliburton and because of the way they run, is better positioned than anybody to do this. And oh, by the way, don't sleep on the fact that their 2 guard, quote unquote 2 guard, is Andrew Nembhard, who, if I remember correctly, led the country in assists his year at Gonzaga and like led the country in assist to turnover ratio, and is also this incredibly intelligent ball handler, playmaker, decision maker. So you really have two guys who can run the break every time, get the ball into pinpoint spots. One of them can really guard in Nembhard, and then everybody else can shoot. Everybody else can defend. I think that is their superpower, is just finding that mismatch and just exploiting it unbelievably.
It's good stuff. I got caught there. Listen, you in your bag there, Sam. Well done. And there's a comment here saying I'm playing out Knicks Pacers in my head while you're talking, and it's not wrong that as much as I go into that series, if it happens, Knicks have to win one more game. But the very simple analysis of, well, you have Mikal to guard Tyrese and you have OG to guard Siakam, and I don't know who's guarding Brunson is interesting, but they've been on our radar in Knicks land for a while, when it looked like the Knicks, when Brunson went out, might fall to like the 4-5. Would the Pacers catch them? They only won one more game than the Knicks did than the Pacers this year. I know a lot was made about the fact that this is the second, really the fourth series that they've won in the last 2 years where the other team was hampered by injuries. And I'm starting to think that it's less about like injury luck or the injury gods just favoring Indiana, and just the fact that they, like to your point about them pinpointing mismatches, recognizing how hampered the Cavaliers were and them coming out in game 4 and like borderline full court pressing, like 3 people in the backcourt as they're trying to bring the ball up and just making you work simply just to get the ball across half court. This was how they wore Jalen Brunson down last year in that series. And Brunson like got his points in game 5. He scored 40 plus and, you know, had a bunch of good offensive games, but they wear you down over the course of 48 minutes. And they have 10 guys. They're able to go 10 deep, and everybody kind of knows their role. There's no like, who's our crunch time 5? They know who should be out there at the end of the game, and they're a scary team going into the next round. I am wrestling through some thoughts of how I would evaluate a Knicks Pacers matchup if it happens. But look, as far as this series is concerned, game 2 is probably the one, if you're a Cavs fan, that you're most crushed by, because you at least could have got back into the series, gotten your guys back, going back into the Indiana 1-1, but dropping the first 2 and losing game 2 in as heartbreaking fashion as you did. And look, this is the other thing about Indiana, and you see it in their attitude, and Halliburton's commented on it. They know that the narrative's out there that they got lucky last year, that Damon Giannis got hurt, and the Knicks had every injury happy to them. And it seemed like they entered this postseason out to prove a point and like wanted to make it so it wasn't close against the Bucks in the first round, even though like Dame got hurt in game 4 and missed a couple games. And even in this series, like they won game 1 with everybody mostly healthy. I know Garland was hurt, but like you don't win a series in 5 games as decisively as they did, especially in game 4, if you're not doing something very right. And part of their plan being to wear you down, you may run out of gas at the end. And that's why, like, we'll talk about the Cavs in this, but seeing Donovan Mitchell, I actually felt for the guy. Give everything he had. And you know he's playing on one leg or one ankle, and those 3 free throws that he missed down the stretch, and you're like, how am I going to fault this guy for missing these, even though they are like the 3 free throws that might end their season, when he's literally trying to give everything he has at 90% against a team making him run a track meet. So credit to the Pacers. There's the history books ignore the details. Back-to-back trips to the conference finals, and like I'll take the Knicks hat off for a second. Who knows where their run might end?
I also just want to call out like one other thing here.
Please do.
I think the way that Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan, the two lead front office executives for the Indiana Pacers, the way that they have constructed this team is brilliant. And it's not dissimilar from what I often talk about in terms of like the Oklahoma City model, where it's dribble, pass, shoot, decision making, positional size, right? Like it's very similar to that model, right? They go out, they get a bunch of really good human beings, regardless of whatever people think about like the Halliburton of it all, whatever. Like this is a team of like good, like competitive dudes for the most part. Ben Mathurin gave us a peek on the other side of that, maybe when he like decided to just drill Hunter in the chest. By the way, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen in Game 4. We haven't talked about that, where DeAndre Hunter just walked up on the dude and just shoved him to the ground and didn't get thrown out. Like
very extremely fed up is what I would say. That was one of those moments where it's like, oh, you lost your mind for a second. And I mean, not that it impacted the game with how it eventually went,
Yeah, like I completely respect him holding his ground and like standing on business, but I kind of can't believe he didn't get tossed. Like that was the amazing thing. So I want to call out just the way this team was constructed above all, right? So Tyrese Halliburton is a remnant of the Paul George deal, essentially. Like they traded Paul George for Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. Oladipo obviously goes down. They trade him eventually, but then they trade Sabonis for Halliburton directly. Like that is honestly the thing that I think a lot of teams end up missing on, is being able to turn deals over again and again. And this is like the prime example of it right now in the league, continuing to churn asset value from a deal. This is really like from the Paul George deal. That's when this build started. And that's a while ago, but that's when this whole thing began. Andrew Nembhard is a first pick in the second round, if I remember correctly. Miles Turner was a late lottery pick. Aaron Naismith was a Celtics late lottery pick that I believe was traded for Malcolm Brogdon, off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Pascal Siakam, they did have to give up real like asset value for. They gave up 3 first rounders, if memory serves, plus the Bruce Brown deal that was, just a deal where they had cap space and were able to give a guy a balloon contract and made it work. Obi Toppin, Knicks legend that they acquired for a second round pick. Jarris Walker, lottery pick, but Jarris hasn't really done anything. Thomas Bryant, like trade for late second round pick. Ben Mathurin, number 5 pick, but like other than like a game and a half, hasn't been a huge part of this series. And then TJ McConnell, obviously a bargain free agent signing, right? This is like the prime example of a team who built it on the margins after they got their star, right? Like they figured out that Halliburton was their guy at the end of the day. And they evaluated that off of the Sabonis deal. And they said, this is the guy we want. That is the key decision that nailed this entire thing. But then they built around him with players that make sense for the modern NBA. Guys that are good on defense and good on offense. And by the way, like Nembhard was not very good defensively at Gonzaga. Credit to them for evaluating that player and figuring out that, oh no, like he can figure this out on defense. He can be good. He was good as a rookie on defense. And like it was a turn like that for him. And like I would argue they haven't hit their lottery picks. Like Jarris Walker and Ben Mathurin have not returned commensurate value from what you would expect. This is a team built on having a top-down ideology once you find your star and not deviating from that top-down ideology. And it really helps. I can't emphasize enough how it really helps that they have a franchise stalwart in Miles Turner that is a big who can defend and who can shoot threes. That is the biggest thing. Like they can be a cheat code for you, I think, in the NBA when you're roster building, because it gives you so many more options in terms of creating different ways to cultivate value. Pascal Siakam does not work as well if he has a big on the interior that is like I'm trying to think, Mitchell Robinson, right? Like a guy that has been fucking phenomenal in the Knicks series,
but can't spread the floor. Yeah.
Can't spread the floor. Isn't much of like a vertical, like he's a lob threat, but like the hands sometimes are a little bit questionable with Mitch. Like you're just not as worried about it. Right. So having that cheat code gave them the ability to go out and create this roster in the way that they were able to, but they haven't really deviated from going and getting athletic wings that are at size, that have potential to defend, that can, other than their 2 lottery picks, frankly, make decisions out on the court in a decisive and intelligent manner. I just can't speak highly enough of Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan in terms of the way that they have built this roster. I think that it has been, I think that it is on some level the most impressive roster build in the league. I think Oklahoma City has obviously positioned itself better than anybody else from an asset perspective, just the way that Sam and everyone there have been able to like continue to roll over draft picks while nailing their draft picks and hitting the Paul George trade in the way that they did, obviously, right? Another Paul George trade. Winner there.
Be interesting if that's the finals, by the way. It's like, oh, you built your team off of Paul George. I built my team off of Paul George trade. What do you know? Yeah. Compare notes.
Yeah. So I just look at it and I think this was arguably like the highest degree of difficulty team build, maybe is the way to put it in the league. And if I was a team like Utah, if I was a team like, Charlotte or whoever, who's like kind of at the bottom right now and is looking for ways to make that jump back up, this is just like such a testament to the fact that it is possible. You don't need to do it with lottery picks. You just need to make smart evaluations on guys who you think have real upside, like they did with Halliburton. And then you make deals around him to make his fit the best that it can possibly be. I've thought a lot about this Pacers team, Andrew.
I mean, look, it's impressive. They've done all of it without a top 10 pick, right? Because Turner's the highest pick there.
Mathurin and Walker. But,
Mathurin and Walker were top 10 picks, excuse me. But like the ability to do it without either of them hitting, like this isn't a team that tanked and decided like we're going to that's the plan and the only plan. Like we're gonna just be bad then slowly build and add pieces, which like OKC, you saw it worked. They, like we said, had to include a Paul George trade that has been paying dividends for the last half decade. But I do have respect for the Pacers, even though I may end up talking very poorly about them for the next week and a half if the Knicks take care of business. I do have a respect for them that goes back to last season, that no matter, what the reputation was about what they were on the defensive end, that's really the only thing I'll add to this conversation is they're not as paper thin a defensive team as their reputation earned last season, where I went into that series thinking, oh, the Knicks will be able to score 130 a game. It's fine. Just outscore them. And as the Knicks lost bodies, they lost the ability to do that. Like the Cavs did miss some shots in this game. And I'm sure we will talk about what the Cavs do from here. The Pacers dictated terms at points in this series, and especially on the defensive end. That's one of the best offensives in NBA history that barely got to 111 points a game over the course of this series. So, credit to the Pacers and what they've built. I'm not looking forward to playing them, but I am looking forward. It's weird. I'm looking forward to playing them because it'll mean the Knicks are in the conference finals, but I'm also not looking forward to playing them because I do think they'll be a tough team to try and go against.
It is just a very, very impressive, difficult team to deal with on a number of levels. By the way, since January 1st, the Pacers are 9th in defensive rating.
There it is.
Like they are a good defense, and they are obviously quite high in offensive rating, 117.3. So they are very, very good. And like the guy that we haven't mentioned is Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle like makes this work in such a significant way.